Living with Tom was a strange time of my life. But I learned many lessons. Fresh out of college, I needed somewhere to live, and with my low income and issues socializing, it made it difficult to connect with potential roommates. That was until I met Thomas. I think I'll keep his last name out for the purposes of protection. Tom, as he preferred, was just about everything I wasn't. He was good-looking, outgoing, effortlessly made friends, and got just about any girl he wanted. He was what parents would dream of having. Tom asked me to move into his family home. His mother and sister tragically passed away 8 months earlier and left him alone in this massive house. At first I was reluctant. He was a little older than me, and his home was somewhat of a shrine to his decreased family. That aside, I worried he wouldn't like me, or if he got to know me, he might not want me living there. I struggled with the thoughts of rejection, but against my better judgment I took the leap. The first weeks living there were amazing. We drank together, went to bars, and chatted up girls. Well, Tom did. We discussed our common interests and found out we even both went to the same college. We bonded over the lack of our fathers around and the connected trauma around family loss. All in all, for the first time I had a friend, a best friend, and it was better than I imagined. But in the back of my mind I was so scared I'll eventually lose it. Even in those times of fear I'd remember what Tom would always say: "Buddy, none of us are getting out alive, so you gotta enjoy it." Morbid but true. After a few months in the house, things became somewhat strange. I observed several women that came to visit Tom but never saw them leave. At the time I just rationalized it as they didn't want to say goodbye to me. Until I saw the flyers around the neighborhood of missing women. They looked incredibly similar to the women over the past months visiting Tom. I wasn't concerned until the police turned up to the house, asking about the women and questioning Tom in depth. I couldn't think my new friend, my best friend, could harm anyone. I saw Tom's face when talking to the police. I know he's innocent. He was so popular and liked, surely no one would believe he had anything to do with it, or am I wrong? I returned home early. Tom was still hours off finishing his shift, so I got to work. I looked everywhere for any evidence of the girls being in the house and never leaving. Once in Tom's room, I rummaged down the back of his wardrobe and pulled out an old orange shoe box. I slowly pulled back the lid, and in the bottom, 12 driver's licenses scattered in no particular order. They all belonged to the missing women and ones I hadn't seen in this house. But 2 stood out of the stack of faces, as I had seen them before. This was his mother and sister's license. I'm sure the room was covered in evidence, and as much as I was conflicted, my new best friend had made a mistake, but I needed to make the call. I remember visiting Tom after he received the death penalty. The positive energy that once infected him was gone. I picked up the phone, looking through the glass. "I don't understand how I can die for something I didn't do," he said with a deep sadness. Emotions were never really my thing, but I felt something at that time. I guess it was maybe a little sadness. I continued to stare at Tom while he proceeded his thoughts. Of course their DNA was in my bed. They came to stay with me. I don't even know those other women and my family. He yelled and began to weep before being hushed by the prison guard. I continued to nod. I said softly and with tact, "What about the licenses and blood on the carpet?" He looks up at me and made dead eye contact, shaking his head. "I don't know, honestly." I nodded in agreement. I knew he wasn't lying. I let out a big sigh. I looked at him and reminded him, buddy, none of us are getting out alive, so you gotta enjoy it, as I hung up the phone, leaving him staring at the glass. I mentioned the sadness I'd say that comes at losing my collection. Took me a long time to collect those cards, oh well. Tom did make a mistake, a big one, and I know he realizes that now. But he was right, none of us are getting out alive, gotta enjoy it. My collection grows again, but my first and only best friend still lingers in my mind. I often visit where I spread his ashes, sometimes it helps me remember everything we went through together.